were totally in remission and or completely healed. And some of the things that Raven talked about, because the show was about health and wellness and also grief. And one of the things that she pointed out to me that was really important was being seclusive when you're going through your grieving process, and we don't realize how we put ourselves in the shell, or we don't communicate as much when we're going through grieving processes, and which is not always limited to the death of a loved one and or a friend. It could be the loss of a job, it could be a bad relationship, it could be some community-based disappointment or major surgery. It could be so many things that disappoint us and that can cause us to go into this state of mind. Another thing that she said that jumped out to me is that to not expect people to understand what you are going through, but it's important for you to understand what you are going through. Some other things that she talked about as far as female health, she talked about fibroids and how it's basically extra levels of estrogen in your body, and how it's connected mainly towards our diet, and how we are to educate ourselves about foods that are estrogen based and how to limit that in our diets. And I know I've heard about fibroids the last 20 years in our community. It's like it's an epidemic, and how it's affecting our women of color like it never did before. So we just want to continue to let it be heard about different ways to help not just our community, but every community, nationally and internationally, about things in regards to our health and our wellness, politically, financially, health-wise, and mentally.
Definitely. A few other things that stood out with Miss White was simply being not as seclusive, reaching out to others when you're feeling in a certain way, if you're feeling closed off, and also checking on your loved ones. For those who have know someone who's lost someone, check on them. We always find that sometimes during the process of the funeral and the news and everything that's going on, we're always there. But when everything is said and done and the casket's closed and it's the day after the funeral, a lot of times you have people that just, they're not communicating anymore, and it's a little difficult part for some. I do know that one person I remember quite some time ago, she lost a daughter. A lady that I knew, she lost her daughter, and I just contacted her, and she was just so grateful for that, that reached out, that touch. And she said sometimes just call to just check on them, just to see. It may not be something big to you, but it means so much to them. And also acts of kindness that we've learned, bring a plate of food, or or perform a service such as cut the grass, things of that nature that would assist along this journey. She also touched on health, and one of the things that stood out to me was advocacy. You are your own advocate for your body. You must know your body. It's well and good to go and see a doctor to check up on yourself. However, you know what your body is feeling at that very moment, and it's very important to make sure you be honest and just really speak on. One of the things I've noticed lately is that, especially women of color, we are by-looked or overlooked, I should say, in the medical field and just by the medical community as a whole in treatment and in care. I recently saw, unfortunately, a gentleman, he lost his wife who in childbirth, and he was advocating for about 10 hours after they birthed their second child, and it was ridiculous, in my opinion, of how the length of time that they could simply just have done a CAT scan to see that she was hemorrhaging. And unfortunately, by the time they did something, she was well on her way to passing, and it was very sad. And I just think that we as women of color in our community, we need to really stand strong in advocating and supporting each other in this mission of the medical community hears our voices and know that we are not to be ignored. So that's one of the things I really appreciate about that. One of the things, I got a call from a friend who was going through the fibroids, and she was mentioning she saw the show and she looked up the Chase tea that Ms. White mentioned. So she is definitely going to try that and see how well that works with her. Absolutely. And so it needs to be heard that the things that are shared here, we are so excited and happy that people are gaining the knowledge and using that knowledge in a very special way.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, I'm glad you spoke about the Chase T. Ms. Waverman White can be reached at phone number 706-820-1493. That's 706-820-1493. And their website is www.wildwoodhealth.org. That's WILDWOODHEALTH.org. And the address is 435 Lifestyle Lane, Wildwood, Georgia, 35757. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
It most definitely needs to be heard. Yes, starting with the announcements, let me see, we're going to not do as many this week, but just quickly, the Peacock House, which is a network commercial and meeting space for entrepreneurs to operate and sell your products for short-term and long-term products. Also, they allow pitch meetings there as well, not just for adults, but also for children. Children that have business ideas, they have invention ideas as well, and we are always working to make sure that we can use our own personal abilities to make sure that we are able to be a part of this economic world today. And the point of contact is Miss Chi Chi. She is a doctor, she's an optometrist, but she likes to go by Chi Chi, and she can be reached at 240-304-9426. That's 240-304-9426. And my second and last announcement would be, because it's mine, well, not because it's my second cousin, but it was nice to meet her during the Thanksgiving holiday or season, or the holiday season, quote unquote, for those who can read between the lines. Her name is Zainab Rice. She wrote her first book when she was a sophomore in high school, and the name of the book is entitled Her Note, Casey Spencer paperback, and it can be found on lulu.com. That's LULU.com.
So, as I mentioned before, we have in our studio the most fabulous Miss Sharice Muhammad, and she's done a lot of things. So let me give you a little understanding who we have here today.
Yes.
Miss Sharice A. Muhammad is a paralegal and an avid researcher with a diverse professional background in, but not limited to, marketing, administration, advertising, non-profit development, and fundraising, special events, public relations, and government affairs. She is in her second term as a chair of the ANC 7D Commission, serving the Kingman Park, River Terrace, Parkside, Mayfair, Eastham Gardens, Central Northeast, Deanwood, and Kenilworth communities. She is a second vice president of the DC Consumer Utility Board, or the DC Cub Driving Strong Advocacy, on behalf of DC ratepayers for all public utilities, including water, gas, electricity, telecommunications, as well as renewables. Ms. Muhammad is a newly elected member of the local school advisory team at McKinley Technology Senior High School, the parental oversight team to review schools' fiscal budget and allocations, cultural affairs, educational policies, faculty development, and engagement with the DCPS administration in the communities. It's a busy woman. Ms. Muhammad is an alumni of Clark Atlanta University with a degree in Mass Media Public Relations and the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. Ms. Muhammad strongly advocates for a review of policies and implementation of those policies to thwart clashes and chaos witnessed in prior interactions between Deanwood residents and the police. She resides in the Deanwood community with her daughter and is seeking re-election for a third term as a commissioner for ANC 7D06. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you having here today. So before we begin, I just want to say thank you I just want to pay attention to this lovely outfit. See the hair? It's giving me so much love right here. I'm sorry. Right now. Okay, let's get to business here.
Yes.
So can you please explain to the audience what is an ANC 7D Commission and what does it do?
I always love to talk about ANC because it gives me a chance to get into some of the DC history, which some people that come to DC don't already know, and I'd never like to assume that they do know. In the District of Columbia, we have three tiers of government. We have, of course, the Office of the Mayor, we have our DC Council, and then we have just below the DC Council, we have advisory neighborhood commissions. There are 40 in the District of Columbia, all over, covering all 8 wards. And each commission has anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 constituents, neighbors that live in that area. And those constituents vote in their advisory neighborhood commissioner for a 2-year term. We just had our election on November the 6th, and I just found out as well that I did win. I took a different strategy this time. I did not, I went as a write-in candidate. And so for many, there were a number of write-in candidates that ran for ANC this term. So I did win I ran unopposed, and so January 2nd will be voted in or sworn in, and this will be my 3rd term.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So what motivates you to do what you do?
I guess it's a fire in the gut. I was born in PG, but I was raised in Washington, D.C. And for me, being in D.C., particularly in the high school years, we've seen D.C., and then, of course, we've seen the changes. After my graduation from high school, Duke Ellington School of the Arts, I went away to college in Atlanta, and then lived in Chicago for 15 years, and then came back right before President Obama's first term. And I immediately saw the changes in the District of Columbia, and I saw just how far behind Ward 7 is. I looked at areas where, in Ward 1, I saw 14th and Irving, and it's booming retail-wise. I looked at areas of Ward 4, Ward 6, and then I come back to Ward 7, and I'm appalled. I'm appalled at the disparaging distance of the lack of retail in Ward 7. And that has been, for me, neighbors that we've known pretty much all our lives. My family, actually. And when I look at the options that Ward 7 has, it is truly a travesty. So I figured, rather than complain, get on the front line and get to work. So that was kind of how I got into it. My aunt, who's deceased now, she was an ANC commissioner in Ward 7, ANC 7E, which neighbors our current commission along the East Capitol Corridor and Benning Road. So for me, being an ANC commissioner was an opportunity to get in and just give back. DC has given me a lot. Arts, culture, education, and so for me this is a labor of love because I love Deanwood, I love my communities, and it's an opportunity to serve our people and our communities.
Wonderful, thank you. What concerns you the most about the situation in your neighborhood or the policies in your neighborhood?
Well, it's not so much the policy, I think it's the lack of direction. And it's hard to, it takes on several nuances, and I'll try to explain. One of the obvious is the lack of retail. The other is the disparaging lack of healthcare system in the District of Columbia, in Ward 7 and east of the river particularly. Also, I'm looking at disparities with regards to education.
Yes.
It just seems to me that Ward 7 has been disrupted in a number of areas. And for me as an ANC commissioner, I work very closely with the DC Council. Our council member, Vincent Gray. I also work very closely with our chairman, Mr. Phil Mendelson, and a number of our at-large members in particular. For more of my LSAT duties, my daughter is a sophomore biotech major at McKinley Tech High School, so in between the two that I'm formally working with closely, I also work with, of course, the council member's office of Kenyon McDuffie. So there's a number of issues, but to answer the question, Ward 7, I view it as an areas of great opportunity. The problem is formulating the plans and identifying exactly what is needed. I listen to my constituents weekly. I have a very engaged constituency, not just in my own single member district, which is the western portion of Deanwood, or we call it Deanwood West. But I also hear from, as chair, I hear from a number of constituents throughout all of our commission boundary, from Kingman Park to Central Northeast to Deanwood, Kenilworth. I hear from our constituents, and for the most part, Deanwood is interested in the healthcare system. We don't have a hospital east of the river.
We sure do.
The UMC is pretty much what we have. And speaking to the gentleman that was testifying on the Hill with regards to his wife, we also recently, UMC, or the United Medical Center in Ward 8, was actually, their obstetrics department was shut down due to deaths, maternal deaths during labor. So the obstetrics unit was shut down. So now, and then in addition to that, we're also looking at the pending closing of Providence Hospital, which is in Ward 5. So again, these are issues that other people or constituents in the District of Columbia don't necessarily have to deal with. And we have disparaging numbers in terms of the highest in cancer, leukemia, diabetes. We have just the numbers of health issues in Ward 7, east of the river, but particularly Ward 7. And we don't have a place to comfortably go in a short period of time. We're having to cross the river to Washington Hospital Center or Sibley or Howard University Hospital. And unfortunately, this is just unacceptable. So the work is certainly there for the commissioners to work on and try to address those disparities.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm learning a lot about Washington, D.C. I moved to this area in the late 90s, and I really rarely went into D.C. unless it was for a hair appointment or something of that nature. However, I have learned a lot about the neighborhoods and so many things that they're doing and what has happened and transformed these neighborhoods. So thank you for what you are doing. So I want to ask, what has been your greatest achievement since you've been in your position?
Achievements. Number one, let's begin with, I'll move a little bit to the utilities. One of the things that we had worked on with ANC 7D was getting, I'll double back, the comprehensive plan, which is a very interesting document. It's the base document that developers, zoning, the council, it's the premier governing document for all development in the District of Columbia. It's an opportunity where land use, zoning, all of those issues converge with this one document. And the comprehensive plan, or the framework that we have been kind of going back and forth with the Office of Planning, is the document that states how development should occur. It addresses how developers should develop. It should be a win-win for the communities.
Yes.
I mean, we've all heard the term gentrification.
Yes.
Yes.
We've all heard development that is more private interest rather than the people that are currently living there. We've also looked at, property values. We've looked at other nuances and components of how expansion and upgrades to communities happen. So with the comprehensive plan, it initially started with the Office of Planning and the framework element, which are the policies by which developers adhere to. And then so for us, when the former director, and his name was Eric Shaw, when he was the director of the Office of Planning, it began with, well, there was a 60-day comment that was supposed to have occurred, but it didn't happen. It was mandated that, well, we don't need to do that. And he said that in a meeting, with a quarterly meeting that Chairman Mendelson normally holds with all of the ANC commissions.
Yes.
Well, he said that, and the place almost became a riot. It was just short of a riot. And so we were like, what do you mean by that? And then, of course, that's when it began to snowball. And so when we spoke with the chairman to talk about, well, no, we need to redress some of this, that's what led to the marathon hearing, where people 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we were testifying I mean, the list was nearly 300, I think it was over 320 witnesses, open and public witnesses, that came to the district building to talk about why this document needs to be as detailed and it has to be so that people can be held accountable. We can't relax the language, we need to tighten up on the language. Definitions need to be very clear. And so when we're talking about a document that everyone can look at and we'll know exactly what the terms are, what are the definitions, and what are the guidelines. So that was the fight for it. Now, we're not out of the woods. So we're waiting to hear back from Chairman Mendelson really at this point to give his kind of weigh in, because unfortunately we just did not feel that the Office of Planning understood the importance of this document. So of course Chairman Mendelson has taken the document, he's done some work with it, and we're waiting to hear what his outcomes will be with regards to the document.
I'm so glad you mentioned the hearings, you know,
Yes.
in regards to, and that was one of the things we discussed on our show with Deja about how we could be more effective politically, if not nationally, at least locally. And this is something that our residents can be more aware of. We do understand that everyone has a schedule and it can be very hard to make some of these meetings, but this is one way that we can really make a difference in policy. So after we vote, we've said it many times before, that's just the beginning. Once someone is voted into office, we are to hold them accountable for what they say they are to do. But even if with policies and laws that are going in place, there is a way that we can make a difference. And I truly don't think, and that's basically how the show started, these conversations that we're having, everyone do not actually have the same information, knowing that they can participate. And that was one of the things that was one of my questions in regards to, because I haven't been back and forth with the meetings. I've had my own endeavors, but I've been back and forth. But I do remember it was a challenge trying to get the word out to all of the residents. And with Ward 7 is very unique because we have a high percentage of seniors who are not computer savvy, that are not getting this information. So I was wondering, what are some things that we are already in place, or maybe futuristically that our ANC goes and try to do to get everyone involved, not just seniors, not just the working class, but also those individuals that don't have computer access.
Yes. And we, as ANC 7D, we have done some considerable legwork in sort of laying a foundation to do and redress that. One, we are not so social media driven that we forget our seniors who are not socially accessible. And that's their right. I mean, everybody doesn't have to get on Instagram to hear what's happening with us. What we're addressing now is we have a newly established standing committee, one of which we have is the Transportation and Infrastructure, which is 2 years running in our ANC, and now we've just established and voted on a communications committee, where we first want to begin to stream our meetings. We also are preparing to implement a call-in for our seniors. Our seniors are people on the phone. They love that. And we are meeting them where they are, and we don't have a problem doing that. So being able to, on a bi-weekly basis, have them call in to get the highlights and the information. And then the other part to that too is newsletters. Some of our seniors, or a lot of our seniors, really would like to go to their mailbox and get their newsletter and sit down at the kitchen table and read what's happening. So some of that will be kind of an overlap. We have a couple of seniors that are internet savvy. They'll get their iPhones, or they'll sit down at their laptops or their computers at home and watch the meeting. That's an option that they can take advantage of, or some of the other two that I have just mentioned. But for us, that has been more of a focal point moving forward. God willing, when we, after January 2nd, when we're sworn in, the communication part is very important. And it hit us recently because we were so kind of engulfed with getting the ANC 7D to a certain point of operation. We had some things to clean up from the previous commissions. And so at this point we have it at a pristine condition, the administration, the clerical part of it, the policy parts of it. So we're at a point now where we can begin now to focus on getting the information to the constituents, and even people who may not be in our commission boundary, because information is just that, information. So
So if It said that recently that you testified before the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee regarding the clash between the gun recovery unit of the Metropolitan Police Department and the residents of Deanwood community. What was that like? What was brought out because of that?
Well, that was a two-part hearing. The first part was that morning before the commission. I'm sorry, before the DC Council, and that was our police chief Peter Nucci and his leadership, immediate leadership, and they reported on what had happened in Deanwood, which was in front of the New's Barbershop, right there on Sheriff Road. That is in the 7C. A and C. So that's one of our neighbors. We share a certain corridor, which is the Sheriff Road. They're closer to the Eastern Avenue Division and Sheriff Road intersections or trisections. And then for us, the other end of Sheriff Road, where the bend from Minnesota into Sheriff Road, that's where our commission boundary. So we're neighbors. And a number of things, Commissioner Chair, Antoine Holmes, we work together a lot of things. So when this Deanwood issue came up with the gun recovery unit, it was very ugly. Very ugly. And we looked at the video footage in the hearing. And then the second portion of the hearing was in the Deanwood community at the Deanwood Rec Center. And it was filled. I mean, the gym was just filled. And we had Council Member Charles Allen, who is the chair of the Public Safety Committee. So it was Councilmember Allen, Gray, of course, from 7, Robert White, and Anita Bonds, who's our at-large, who was newly re-elected as well. So the hearing was very charged because people are angry. Policing in the Black communities, not just Washington, D.C., but this is not a new issue. We know this.
Yes.
This is a historic, this thing goes back 40 years.
Yes.
And this is not going to be a quick and easy fix either. My testimony was sort of an admonishment on the community because just recently at that time, we had just had our primaries in June.
Yes.
And we were in the low double digits in terms of turnout. And so there's cause and effect. And when you talk about policing, your vote and the democratic process of voting sends a message. And when you talk about what's going on with our police, the police are paid by your tax dollars. So all of this kind of overlaps. So as a constituent, when you look at Ward 7, at that time, our numbers, I think we were 15, 16% voter turnout during the primary. So that message went to the mayor. And also went to Peter Nucci. And what is that message saying? 15, 16% voter turnout. We don't care.
That's right.
You can kill us, you can beat us, but we don't care. That's what those numbers mean. So for us to stand here at that time at the hearing to say that we are tired of this, well, there's an inconsistency in messaging because your vote said one thing and you're now screaming at council members in addition to that. So again, which message are we taking here? And we need to take all of that into consideration. Now, for constituents, being involved in the community and what's going on is the first part. And so skin in the game for us is getting involved in what happens in our communities.
Yes.
We're not of the savior mentality that the police are going to save us.
Right.
What we should be looking at is how does the police feel about us? Now, I know for me, personally speaking, we have a good relationship with the police in terms of our former commander, David Smith, and at that time we worked very closely with him and all of his patrol services bureau. They come to our ANC meetings, they report what's going on, spikes in crime, in what areas are those crimes, and then we have the gun recovery unit, which is another group.
Yes.
And so educating our constituents about that. Why would a gun recovery unit be necessary in this instance? And those faces that we saw in that video were not familiar faces. And so for us as ANC commissioners, we have to speak the truth to the chief of police. And now our new, for Ward 7, or the 6th district, which kind of covers much of Ward 7, her name is Juria Habibullah. She's the new commander now. So she's been very prominent, she's been very accessible, she's come to a number of our meetings, not just ANC meetings, but also our civic associations, our citizens association meetings. So she's made herself available to come and meet the constituents. So building the relationships, the community
Yes.
building of and the police being a part of that, that is what we're interested in. We're not interested in people who don't respect the people of our community. And that's part of what we have done as ANC commissioners and as residents.
Yes.
To build the relationships, because if a police officer is germane to our community, we don't see the type of behavior that we saw among the gun recovery units.
Yes.
Because if you know us, then you're accountable to us. And so we have that rapport. And then, of course, to adjudicate, policing in a respectful manner, the laws are being adhered to. That is the kind of relationship that we want with the police. Not with this kind of invasion and then you're just disrespectful, you are intrusive, and you're abusive and excessive. That's not what we're looking for here. And for much of the community, it has been the latter because, again, the gun recovery unit is different from the Patrol Services Bureau. And that's part of what we're trying to outline to the police, the chief and on down, the leadership. So we want people to understand who is moving in our communities. Those officers that are on the bikes,
Yes.
the officers that are on foot, the ones that are in the vehicles, that's one unit. But the other part of that, that's what we need to address.
I would necessarily think as a whole that, because we know that, like you said, over the last 40 years, actually it's been in American history, you kind of look at policing and its inception, but I don't want to focus on that too much. But you would think that at some point, before I make my statement, being a police officer is a tough job. I mean, you have to make split-second decisions. You don't know who to trust, who not to trust. But I'm hoping with the onslaught of these excessive force and just their general attitude, that there's some type of initiative that the police department is doing to address that mentally and emotionally. Because I can't imagine leaving my house every day with the possibility of me not going home. And how that's affecting your marriage, your children, just your life in general. So it's a tough job, but I'm hoping that that's something that we can talk to the commissioners, the commanders about, in regards to what are they doing to help the police be more balanced, so that they can, those situations may not happen. But I truly understand on the outside looking in how where they have to kind of enforce the law, but also do it in a productive way, but not excessive way.
And
So
we
that
have
can-
agreement.
Yeah.
We have agreement with
Absolutely.
that. But the story that we have to address too is I was afraid for my life. I was afraid for this. See, that seems to be the precursor to open fire,
Yes.
Justification of killing, especially with unarmed citizens, residents.
Yes.
So again, if you were afraid and you didn't even assess the situation, then maybe the policing is not for you. Maybe you need to choose another career path. And see, these are the kind of conversations that we've had with leadership of the police. And these are the candid conversations that have to happen in every metropolitan city. Because it seems to me that we're hearing the same narrative. Okay, and so we want to redress that, because if you feel that this is a community where you are constantly in danger, and I question that, but if that's your narrative, okay. Now you're in a community where you're in constant danger, and you feel that the knee-jerk response with your rifle or with your weaponry is the first response, then maybe policing is not for you. And if you need to find something else.
And can we be even a little bit more candid? Okay, does that differ depending on what ward you're in?
Of course.
And
Of course.
and that's
Glad you
reality.
brought that up.
That's a reality. Without saying too much, I had an experience about a month ago. I don't think the person even realized that they were discriminating against me. I'm working in a federal building, without saying too much. And I think part of it, because we have to be able to look at the big picture.
Absolutely.
And we must understand that many of our people, no matter what your background, our mentality has been conditioned by the media through life experiences, through the implementation of separation for people. So we really have to look at it in every possible angle in order for us to even get to a place where you're not subconsciously discriminating.
I do have family in law enforcement, and I do understand both sides of the coin. You did mention about as a police officer, public servant,
Yes.
you are concerned each and every day as you
Yes.
go home. If you leave your home, will you come back? But on the same opposite coin, that is the residents who are concerned. If they do leave their home,
Mm-hmm.
they're concerned if they can come back as well.
True.
So now, what needs to be done? How we can better get a handle on this seems to be the problem, or seems to be the question, I should say. And it's going to take a little bit more. It's going to take a little bit more, and that is what I believe your position is strongly so needed. And we thank you for that. So, what do you see in terms of future for your area and your position?
ANCs have to work together.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yes.
one of the things. That's
Absolutely.
the very first thing. For us, we see fellow ANC commissioners at a lot of the meetings. We try our best to get to other ANC meetings because that's another line of communication that I
Yes.
think we need to strengthen. Some of us are being affected the same way on some policies. We need to come together and do a collective brain trust to try to forge solutions for that. Another part of that too is we see each other. Councilmember Gray has a monthly Ward 7 leadership meeting. I'd like to see more participation on the parts of those in leadership positions to take advantage and come to those meetings.
Yes.
Because a lot of information is imparted in that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But more so, it's an opportunity and a platform to converse with others in one segment, in one location, at a kind of a periodic period of time. And so with ANC commissioners and leadership of the different civic associations, this is the time to converge. This is our kind of a monthly caucus where we come together and talk about those issues. And then of course we have the ear of our council member, and a lot of times he's inviting some of the other council members to come and take part, get information. We had Councilmember Che, who's over the Transportation and Environment Committees. Anita Bonds, who's also over the ANCs currently. And so a number of ANCs that come, this is an opportunity to get information and to impart our challenges, because as the council member, he is responsible for our representation on the council. And so as he's forging solutions and redress of policies, he's also garnering the partnerships and support on certain measures with other council members.
Yes.
So again, taking advantage of the opportunities and resources in these meetings are very important. So I'd like to see that.
Yes.
You know, that's one of the items and areas that I'd like to see improvement with working alongside with agencies. And then the other part to that too is kind of bridging partnerships and coalitions with other agencies throughout the city, because resources are just that. We have, quiet as it's kept. Ward 4, I learned, have some issues in terms of grocery stores. They have grocery stores, but there are areas within Ward 4 where they were having food deserts. There were certain
In Ward
clusters
4.
in Ward
Wow.
4.
Okay.
And so what was so interesting is, of course, the response to them was a little different than ours. But again, being able to discuss those issues across the river.
Yes.
And being able to brainstorm and, well, what are you all doing? So the sharing of best practices for me throughout the District of Columbia for ANCs have been just very, very beneficial. Because again, why spin the wheel or try to reinvent the wheel, trying to formulate solutions when, let's try this particular, we can tweak it a little bit to make it more customized and germane for us. But good ideas are good ideas. So I think that's an opportunity for us as well to network with agencies throughout the city.
Yes. I would like to expound on what you just said. I think when we were signing up for today, you mentioned teamwork makes the dream work. And with my tenure with the federal government, when I first walked in there, I realized that there was a lot of overlapping and a lot of miscommunication. In the federal, well, I'm not talking about the federal government coming from the private sector, but just in general, this is a general statement.
Yes.
So this is a universal statement. This is not about the government. This is not about you if you feel convicted. But we must understand, as mankind, in order to succeed, we must work together. We must put everything aside, and this concept supersedes any background, your understanding, your income, your pay grade. We must take this concept not just to our community, but first to our homes. This starts at home. It starts with mom, dad, sister, brother, And like the inception of this show, when we were starting this show, we wanted to show a positive interaction also with between male and female, and also between male and female of color. And we just wanted to continue to have that platform to work together, no matter what. I mean, the only thing I want you to see is my ability. Don't do that. Don't do so because of where you're from. So if we are able to adapt that 100% in every avenue of life, we will be fine. So I'm so happy to hear you say that, because in order for us to succeed, without government, without spiritual life, without whatever industry you're a part of, our leaders have to share the same vision, and that's to first communicate.
Yes, I think I agree. I very much agree. For me, community has always been holistic.
Yes.
It is a holistic entity with its own ecology, and sometimes with government we become bureaucratic because we've got too many things going on. Government in its inception is supposed to redress issues of the people.
Yes.
And sometimes we lose our way with that because we become so formal.
Yes.
And therein lies the bureaucracy.
Yes.
And to try to, the quickest distance between A and B is the straight line from one point to the next.
Yes.
And for us, sometimes that it becomes a curvature. For us as ANC, I know for ANC 70, I can't speak for other ANCs,
Yes.
but I know for us, we're constantly reviewing policy. Is this the quickest way to get it done? And I'm not saying in terms of timeline, I'm simply saying in execution,
Yes.
in implementation. If we are trying to get this particular outcome, how many agencies do we have to meander through to get to resolution of that one issue?
Yes.
And how can we strip the layers and get to it?
Yes.
And a lot of times what we're finding, we just have that bureaucratic process. And so for us, when constituents have certain needs, we can identify the extra stuff that's going on that shouldn't be.
Yes.
And we're able to strip away those layers. So for us as ANC, we're in an advisory role, but a lot of times I'm hoping futurely that we can truly become the advisors to the council, because we're right there on the front lines. We're dealing with the constituency. So again, government is supposed to be streamlined and efficient, and a lot of times we're having to cut those layers out so that we can address the issues quickly and as time efficiency as possible.
I think right now would be perfect for me to add my next question for you. So it's sort of like a roundabout, but it was the statement that was connected to your picture. And it says, I'm unapologetically for the community and upholding to the community. And there's a couple of words that jumped out to me. Upholding, which means owing things and having a duty to someone in return for help or service. To owe means, and to owe, those are other words that jumped out to me, which means have an obligation to pay or repay in return for something received. And so I was like, wow, that is so profound. But how did you come about with that statement, and also what does the 4 dots after the statement mean? Instead of 3, you have 4 dots. I just wanted to.
Well, no, I don't think anything specifically about the 4 dots.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no real meaning to that, but I make it a point to say that I am unapologetically community. There are many ulterior motives people come to ANC. Let's just put it out there, call it like it is. Sometimes it's, and I don't knock it. I mean, some have, they have aspirations. They have political aspirations, and I say all the time, I don't knock people's hustle. And of course, their dream to go higher. Council, mayor. We have people that aspire to be mayor of the city, and that's nothing wrong with that. I am unapologetically community. I came up in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
The community is the base of which much of who I am has come from a loving, culturally rich community.
Yes.
I went away to college, I studied, I came back to give back and to serve my community. I make no bones about that. So I'm not for sale.
Yes.
You can't buy me. I'm not interested in the corporate or public or private interest. I'm interested in the community being at the table to take advantage of the tax dollars that they have paid over the years, the homes that they have paid for, where they raised their families, where they've worked. And that seems to be the empty seat at the table, unfortunately. private interests,
Mhm.
developers are all at the table, community officials at the table, but unfortunately, the advocates for the community so that gentrification can take a decelerated pace.
Mhm.
So for me, I came up with that, it kind of hit me in one of the zoning commission meetings,
Mhm.
because when I listen to applications that come through the zoning commission, and this is pretty much where all this development that you see in the city, that's the launching pad for it. So when the
Yes.
commissioners are listening to those, or reviewing those applications, we see and we're able to follow the money.
Yes.
And a lot of times the community members are not necessarily attached to the money train,
Mhm.
but their interests are just as important, because again, these are people's lives. People
Absolutely.
have worked all their lives, and for them, who's at the table to speak for them?
Absolutely.
And that's our job as ANC commissioners. I'm beholden to the people that elect me, and I'm beholden to the people that live in those communities that we serve. So when we go to the zoning commission meetings, when we go to some of these other agencies,
Yes.
and we are pit bulls, because we are having to look at these applications, and we're looking at those avenues and doors that they're coming through to really seize opportunities. But it's not opportunities for win-win. It's an opportunity for those special interests. And that's where we're there to say, no.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I think trying to scroll here, but that's our purpose statement. So it needs to be heard as a community-based and show driven by integrity, and will sustain respectable standards in all arenas. Point blank. We have to maintain that. Now, is it going to be easy? No.
No, it's not.
And I'm so glad you said that, because your energy can sometimes be taken incorrectly as being just in a negative way. But I just know that's not what
No,
it
I
is.
know it.
You're just thorough in a good way. And I think we, even as a male, we must understand that that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. That you're passionate about what you're doing. And then if you were crying like, oh, she's just a female. No, we must understand that you're taking a stand. And this is what it looks like. So that's why I wanted to have you on the show. And that's what I've seen, even on the days walking from the subway station. You're with your daughter in the rain, your daughter underneath the table in the meeting, you know. But that's what I saw, and that's what I understand. That's another thing that I want to point out, even to men. It's not, you don't need to be intimidated by that. You know, it's just you have a woman that knows what she wants and what she's trying to do for the community and for herself. She's just being straightforward and thorough about what she believes in, without the tears.
Thank you.
All right.
And it's tears sometimes.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
It's not easy. It's
Right.
really not easy.
Right.
And I'd like to just say quickly to that. I encounter a lot of men in working with ANC, and unfortunately, there's got to be a reestablishment of family.
Yes.
There's got to be.
Yes.
I mean, that's a definite attack.
Yes.
When we look at the numbers and we look at statistical data, we're looking at the Black family in particular
Yes.
has been aggressed,
Mm-hmm.
accelerating aggression towards the Black family, and I think that's the basis of all community. So if you want to destabilize a community, you begin to kind of strip and to separate. And so with men and women, we really have to come back together
Yes.
as the family unit.
Yes.
That's essential, because we're looking at these disparities, and when you really drill down on the data and the numbers of why our families are so destabilized, that they're not there.
Yes.
And there are some that are there. And see, when we talk about men and families and the impacts of men being present in the family, that's something that we should look at again
Yes.
and understand its importance.
I think we should have a show about that. Yeah, because it is so important, because in order to even function, your foundation has to be right. And some of us have been so conditioned and so blind and so poisoned and so misled that then some of us don't even realize that we're even in that predicament, that mindset.
Men are not our enemies, and women are not men's enemies. We're not your enemies. And unfortunately, circumstances are such. And I mean,
Yes.
circumstances, being able to meander through the circumstances and get to the root of it. But again,
Yes.
we are not one another's enemies. We're some allies and advocates.
Absolutely.
So,
One of my quick sayings is that what I can't do, she can do. what you can do, I can do. It's not a competition.
It is not a competition.
Thank you. Now, tears doesn't necessarily mean weakness.
That's right.
That's true.
It just means passion. Because sometimes you're so passionate about something, you
Yeah,
just
but
can't get it out, and just your emotions just overwhelm you.
Yeah.
And tears is the only response you can show. So, tears do not mean weakness.
that is true.
Coming from a woman, period. But
Here, here.
yes, yes,
That's
yes,
true. I
yes,
agree.
yes. And I do believe in community. I come from a country where, you know, there you have a neighbor
Yes.
that's lacking something. You share in order to get by each and every single day.
Wow.
And of course, I have to go to my Proverbs. So
Yes.
it's like-
Perfect timing. Perfect timing.
But you know, there's a saying. One of the proverbs is, "Although we are one family, it's all of us are family." You know, we may have different backgrounds, different cultures, different heritages, but we're all one people. And in order to survive in this, we definitely need to stick together and be a community. And slightly touching on what you're talking about men in the family and their role. Once you break down the family structure, that is, their society goes out the window, pretty much.
You see what we're seeing?
Yes.
Oh, the
Yes.
manifestation.
Yes, yes. And that is where we need to strive and fight hard for our families, no matter what that looks like, whether it's voluntary, involuntary families, but it is. And what I mean by that is, you know, if they're a family that was together and no longer together, you still have to work together, because this is another generation you're raising to
Yes.
get to that point. So if uncle has to step in, or grandfather has to step in,
Or neighbor.
or neighbor,
Yes.
yes, you know, definitely. So here's a segment in our show that I love to share and always throws Robert off, so I get a little kick out of that.
Absolutely.
Out of it.
Okay.
For most of the viewers, they know that I'm from Guyana, South America. I've lived in the United States for a very long time. However, I still keep a lot of that cultural heritage in my spirit. That's why when I talk, when I eat,
Yes.
dress, everything. However, we have proverbs,
Mhm.
and of course, I got to give the Guyanese Creolese version of it. So it's a broken form of English, just to prepare you.
No.
Okay.
I'm familiar.
Similar to Ebonics for some, and of course have to get a translation. So for me, it's fitting for this. I'm always wondering how any of our show topics ever relate, but somehow there's always a proverb,
Yes.
and that always will definitely. Let me just find for 1 second, and it's just for me. I find it funny, and but Robert just kind of just, you know.
I love the cultural roots.
Yes.
I love it.
Absolutely.
I just
Absolutely.
love
This is
it.
a multicultural show.
Yes.
Yes.
Diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. It says, "Good gubby na float atop." Okay.
Say that one more time.
Good gubby na float atop. Good stuff does not float at the top.
Mm.
Okay? Things don't rise up like that. It means good things do not come easily. Good things do not come easily. And you, as an advocate for the community,
Yes.
where you are fighting, and it's not coming easy, but you're fighting for it. And we know that it's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
And we thank you for that, because
Yes.
it is, you're the voice of those who do not hear, who cannot speak for themselves. Sometimes, you know, the loudest one gets the most attention, and not necessarily in a negative way, but in a way that, okay, here's a representation. You need to listen. You're speaking and you're standing out, and we need to pay attention to that. And that is something that every community needs, every family needs, every our community needs on a whole. Because if we remain silent, I think remember she was mentioning, if we remain silent,
Yes.
nothing gets done.
Yes.
You're complicit in the changes that are
Correct.
taking place. They're
Yes.
ill affecting you.
That's
Absolutely.
correct. That's
So-
correct. So, good
Thank
coming up for the top.
you.
Yes. I'm so glad that you brought that point up, because being an ANC, it's another job and a half.
Oh, yes.
So you have your job, you have your family, but it's another job. That's why, and even in the past, my neighbors said, "Well, you gonna run for ANC?" I'm like, and not because I don't want to do it, but because I understand the commitment.
Yes.
It's like somebody coming to you, "You want to be my godparent?" No, I understand the
Yes,
commitment.
that's a very big commitment.
But yeah, it's full time. I'm talking about
It is
full
full-time.
time. And now knowing what your profession is, I know you at work, working, and then you have to find time to manage your life and the ANC, which is literally 24/7.
It is.
Literally. So I commend you and all the ANCs today and ANCs of past. I might come in. I'm gonna tell you a little joke real quick. Actually, this is a true story. I actually wrote my name in the ANC this year when I voted.
Really?
Yes, because 7005 was empty,
Right.
and I just wrote it in. And I was like, I bet I win.
Well, actually, since you brought up 7005,
Yes.
there was another write-in candidate that was running. Her name is Aretha Jackson.
Mhm.
She is the president of the Fort Chaplain Tenant Association.
Awesome.
And she's the one that actually won the write-in candidacy.
Good.
So interestingly, she's actually very active with the ANC. She's
Mhm.
part of our Transportation and Infrastructure Committee.
Awesome.
And so the former commissioner resigned, and then she actually relocated back to Michigan.
Really?
So the seat had been open for the past couple of months. Yeah, she resigned. Yeah. So
Okay.
when we approached Aretha, because we knew she was very active with
Right.
7005,
Mhm.
and so we asked her, we said, would you be interested in running? So at that time she said, well, I'll probably do a write-in candidacy.
Yes.
And she ran and she won.
Yes.
So hopefully, you
She
know.
beat me.
Now, what would you have done if you'd won?
Oh.
Because sometimes things can easily
Yes.
backfire.
It would
That's
have
correct.
been destiny because I
Okay.
had never written my name on a ballot.
Well,
It was like a thought, and I was like, I wrote my name in. That would have been interesting.
That would have been interesting.
I would have to cancel a lot of stuff because you really do need the time to really commit to that. You really, in honesty, because even though people see us in leadership positions, we are really servants
Yes,
to
we
the
are.
people. We are really servants to the people. I just have one quick announcement. I met a young man by the name of Leroy McKenzie. He's the owner of J&F Enterprises. He offers many services, but the service that I want to implement to share is that anyone who's writing as an aspirating author, they not just help with publishing, but also with distribution. And he can be reached at 443-762-2324. That's 443-762-2324. And the website is jnfenterprises with an S.com. Awesome.
We want to thank Ms. Sharice Muhammad once again
Thank you.
for joining us.
Thank you
It was
so
a
much for
pleasure
having
and
me.
honor
I
Yes.
to have
enjoyed
you.
it.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you so much.
Very well informed and very
Yes.
inspired by what you are doing and will continue to do. Hope to keep in touch with you.
Thank you. I
Good
promise.
job.
I'll probably see you on the subway.
Stay in the trenches.
Stay in the
That's what
trenches.
I do.
And that's what it's really all about. So I want to also encourage you. Because once again, if you're going to maintain integrity in any arena, there are going to be some challenges. Because there's an external energy that's fighting against the good. But good does overcome, and I do believe that love conquers all.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Well, my name is Onika Terrell,
My name is Mr. Robert Eugene Young.
and it needs to be heard.
Now that you've heard it,
What will you do?
thank you.